going to start with the important changes that affected many people, especially rural children. The consolidation and closing of the one-room schoolhouse. This led to the expansion of the Augusta Elementary School and affected families throughout the area. Judy Dekan will share her experiences and research.
All my years, I always get a first school. Yeah. Okay. So, good old school days, the golden rule days. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Mildred Sperber taught me that. So the times with the changes in Wisconsin after World War II was driven by the need to consolidate all the rural schools. There were over 7,000 districts in the state of Wisconsin, and after the consolidation it went down, where now we have 421 schools. And that consolidation, these are the school that I went to, Scotts Valley, in its worser days. These are different people I went to school with. You'll probably find a picture of me in almost all but one. And when they consolidated, the teachers from the rural schools needed to get their four-year teaching degree if they wanted to stay on and teach in the schools. And these are some of those last teachers from the rural schools. And we had a lot of the rural schools. There was Progress School, which was north of town. Evergreen was north of town. Diamond Valley was out south. The Dell School obviously still stands out there, even though it has been moved around several times. And then we have Gus Clark, who we worked with when we did our town Augusta to renovate the school, and it was open a while with him when the museum was open. And thankfully one of my classmates sent me pictures from the Bills School from 1961. Russell's Corner School has been torn down, but we all remember that out here, and it was turned into a home. Kirkham Valley out by Coon Fork, and if you look at these, you can see it was one of the last days because they put all the older kids before the elementary was done, and they were out at Kirkham Valley. The White School also was north of Augusta, and then on the bottom you'll see listed some of those schools that had already closed, and I don't have pictures of all of those. Then they moved us here, but before we all came in, I came here at the beginning of my 6th grade year, and we were in one of these classrooms, and then once the school was done, I moved over at semester in January to the new elementary school over there. But while we were out in the rural schools, these kids were in town here. So we have the class of 1969, the class of 1970, see some of my friends in there, the classmates, and then the class of 1971. Those were the last classes at the old high school. But through the years, some of the older schools, we got together from out at Russell Corner, and we had celebrations and reunions, and this was thankful to Bobby and Julie Stenson because that's when they lived in the home. When the school was done, there was also the dedication, and it brought people all together that year in January 1964, and I believe this next picture that at least 3 of those boys, or maybe all 4, are here in attendance. So you can maybe try and match up who you think they are, but they're here. And with our school tradition, how many of you still remember the old alma mater and how many times we sang? And we could probably break into song right now with the school. One of the big changes during that time was the dress code. And without me elaborating a lot on that, when you go through all of these pictures, look at the glasses, look at the dress styles. Some of us from my age knew if we nailed on the stage at the old school, your skirt had to touch the floor, and if it didn't, maybe you would be sent home, detention, different punishments. There were some steep punishments. You might, why not kick a kid out of school for a few days because their skirt is too short? So you'll see all of that, and the same with how the boys are. So you're going to look on that without me talking too much about it. The other thing that we did during that time was a change, and it was maybe that teaching kids for careers. So you'll notice that during that, and some of you out here may well have been teacher secretaries, or you may have been worked in the kitchen and helped with the kitchen staff because students did a lot of that, as did they work with the custodians. As one of my classmates says, she learned how to fold towels because of Alizé. And then we see our bus drivers where they started out in the early years with very few bus drivers to at one time having 12 different bus drivers. as well as the fact that we all had to walk to school. So you'll see there was a need for safety patrol, and there's actually a safety patrol badge, I think, hanging out there in the exhibits that you could look at. And it's just a wonderful snowy day going out of school to your bus. Also, obviously there's so many things we could participate in, so we'll look at these slides without a lot of commentary, but you may remember that you wore some of these. The usherettes over there changed their outfits from white suits to plaid skirts to plaid jumpers in my time frame there. But they were the ones that, they took the tickets, or they handed out the programs, they made the programs for sports events, because we had places and jobs for girls to do. Marching band, back in our day, it was all the wool suits. They marched in those in the summer. And then I'm sure some of you have fond memories of that, of being in parades, when the old theater was still in town and marching during the events. Or maybe you were a majorette. Or maybe you were a part of the fundraisers where we sold calendars with everybody's birthday, or you were part of choir, because Augusta had a strong for the arts. So not only was it the music side, but it was also the drama and the theater. In the last years, you know, our one-act play kids, there's still been a lot of activity that way. One of the things in dress code is those of us of my era all had those beautiful blue gym suits. And we all know what happened to those. They were passed down from generation to generation, and eventually they were probably ripped off your body in the locker room. I think some of the girls will very well remember that. But look here to these girls. Were they excited into the mid-70s when they got to wear shorts and a t-shirt? But the girls, home ec was really there to teach girls how to manage their home. You got to put together your bridal book and everything you were going to do to be the good wife. And so they were a very active group. As you can see, you look at all of the girls that participated. So if you were a girl, you knew what to do. But if you were a boy, you could be a part of the organization for the National Farmers. And I tried to get into ag classes, and Sam Rennick, I begged him in different ways, and he was like, nope, can't do, girls just couldn't do that. But those boys even had their own FFA basketball team, so they were a very involved group. We had the regular classes that you've all met, science, history, and everything, but time started to change with the consolidation. And you'll see that then they started adding agriculture and industrial arts to train the boys. So not only was it the farm, because the farm families were going away after World War II, they began to teach building and other types of things. And with that came the need for capstone courses. And the capstone then we shared with other school districts, and kids had more hands-on. And they also formed the cooperative educational agencies, the CESAs, because they then took the place of Jenny Webster, who had been the county school superintendent, and had regional areas to help support education and the change of the curriculum that they knew was needed. And you can see here we had the capstone classes. You could have secretarial skills, building trades, auto mechanics. We all know Don Anderson and what strength there. But also, in 1965, the mandatory attendance age for schools changed, and it went to 18, where before kids ended up, if they were on the farm, they maybe dropped out at 16 and they helped on the farm. With that change, if there were kids that struggled with education, came what was known then as special ed, and it's now had a variety of names since then. The social changes were big. With the changes with Title IX came equity for girls and boys, and at that point in time, in 1943, you'll see we moved from GAA, and we moved on from all those other things that were just meant for the girls, and the boys had their roles, and you can look at, they wore it proudly as lettermen, and we moved on to where we weren't just cheerleaders anymore and basketball players, but we had a lot of opportunities, and so those in the late 70s all started as well. And then we'll see here, those are all sports. Somebody's going to talk more about that later. One of the things during our time, too, the boys could bring their rifles to school, because in the 1960s, for several years here, the NRA was promoted by the National Rifle Association, so we had shooting contests, and you can see the photos. Sam Rennick was a coach. We also offered a lot of trips and outdoor adventures. We had the Science Club, where we did overnight stays in Copper Falls, down in Milwaukee, a lot of different places around the state for a few years. We also cared about the environment. Conservation Day was a big thing. All of those pine trees around the buildings out here, we planted when I was in 6th grade. We achieved high learners with the high quiz bowl, and Yvonne Silvernail took those. But then we hit that age in the 70s where all of a sudden, these words by former students really show the changing of the times, but then we had those kids who thought they were pretty groovy and hip, and they were the beginning of our hippies. Yeah, they got the long hair, they still had to wear the dresses, but the times were changing. And Rod Brunswick, what he said then as far as hope, still really lives true today in what we should be doing as far as things and being on. These are some of my report cards. We went from little mimeograph sheets with your attendance to the one your parents had to sign to little data sheets that were carbon copies to make it easier to now that it's all online. School for us was a lot of fun times and goofing off. There's that one picture with the kids up off the balcony, and I think of that where they're sliding in out. That was where I had physics with David Jacobson, and we were doing convex and concave lenses, and Eric Walker was holding it just so, and all of a sudden my navy blue pantyhose started on fire. So I remember about concave and convex lenses. And then we come to the celebration. You finish school, so this is graduation, but in that side, you see the three of us who went to the one-room Scotts Valley School. That's us there, and that's the three of us graduating. Lucy the tallest, Judy the shortest. School traditions, we all had class rings. Some of you I know still wear yours. And then there were all the wonderful things of homecoming and prom. And up there we have Jennifer to thank for this wonderful auditorium and what a beautiful space to be in. So again, you might recognize some of your floats or some of the people on the floats. And as we wind down, we come to this, which was my class. Thank you, Craig Vinipel. We'll blast the schlitz out of them. Norm Hormy was with us. And then they wouldn't let it go through the braid, but Ronnie Bull took it through. And there's so much more. See the displays. Thanks to Dave Jacobson, who let me use his yearbooks. And there we go. Thank you much.
Thank you, Judy. Love seeing all those old pictures, and some of those people are recognized in there. Many of those students that were mentioned that helped out on Conservation Day helped transform the area and trails around the newly installed dam on Coon Fork. This was created as an Eau Claire County park in the early 1960s. It has become a popular camping and recreational area. The pristine setting on a no-motor lake offered opportunities for canoeing, fishing, and swimming. Many local kids learned to swim at the public beach. I was one of them. Please see our display out in the lobby to rekindle some more memories.